This video is for October 17th, October 18th, and we're looking at how sine, cosine, tangent can be applied to solve different problems, especially involving triangles. So I'm going to do 3 problems, 1 video per problem, and we'll go from there. So here, the Habitat for Humanity is building a wheelchair ramp for an elderly couple. The distance from the, ground to the base of the door is 3.5 feet. However, the state of Tennessee requires all wheelchair ramps to have an angle of elevation of 5 degrees. In part A, we're asking how much wood does the Habitat for Humanity need to buy for the length of the ramp. Well, let's go ahead and draw a picture. Anytime you're not given a picture, let's go ahead and draw that. So here we have the ground. Here's our house with a door. Little doorknob right there. And so we're drawing, we need a ramp from the doorway to the ground. So there's our ramp. If they built the house right, this would be a 90-degree angle. And now from the problem, we know that this from the ground to the base of the door is 3.5 feet. So we know that this would be 3.5 feet. And the state of Tennessee requires wheelchair ramps to have an angle of elevation of 5 degrees. So we're thinking about angle of elevation, and we're thinking about elevating going up. So our angle of elevation from the ground to here would be 5 degrees. Now in part A, it's asking how much wood does the Habitat for Humanity need to buy for the length of the ramp. Well, here's our ramp here. Okay, let's call that X for the length. And so we're trying to solve for X here. And we actually have things that we need. Here we have an angle. We have the side opposite of that angle, and we want to try to find the hypotenuse. So because we're dealing with opposite and hypotenuse of an angle we're given, we're going to be using like SOHCAHTOA. Opposite and hypotenuse, we're looking at sine. So what we can do is say sine of the 5-degree angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Our opposite side is 3.5. We're dividing by our hypotenuse, which is x. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and solve that equation for x. And so if we do that, here x is in our denominator. We want to get that out of our denominator. So what we would do is multiply both sides by x. I'm going to write this as x over 1 because we're dealing with a fraction. Here, multiply this side by x. We would get x times sine 5 degrees. The reason it's beneficial to multiply by x here is these x's would divide out. Those would go away. And so what we're left with is 3.5. And now we want to get x on its own. We have that sine of 5 there, so let's divide both sides by a sine of 5 degrees. So x is 3.5 divided by sine of 5. Now in class we solved this using the TI-84 calculators. If you don't have that, you can use a, what am I trying to say? You can use a online calculator to solve that. And if you do that, you would get, x is equal to 40.16, rounding up, feet. So put this in 3.5 divided by sine of 5, we would get 40.16. So we now know that the length of the ramp would be 40.16 feet. In part B, we want to figure out how far from the base of the ramp to the base of the house. So now we're solving for this side. I'm just going to call this B for base, if you will. Now we're trying to solve for that. Now, in solving for this, we could use Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and solve. If you want to pause and try it that way, what can't hurt. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to use cosine of 5. So I have the angle here. I'm trying to find the adjacent, and now I know the hypotenuse. So I'm going to say cosine of 5 degrees. Well, if I'm looking at cosine of 5 degrees, the adjacent side is B. The hypotenuse is X, which we already know is 40.16. And so now we're solving this equation. Well, if we're solving this equation here, we're solving for B. It's B divided by 40.16. So what we're going to do here is multiply both sides by 40.16, 40.16. So we have 40.16 cosine of 5 degrees. These 40.16s would divide out, and we're left with B. So be careful here. The temptation in class was to multiply both sides by B. That's not going to get where we need to go. We need to multiply both sides by 40.16 to get B on its own. And then once we do that, then what we can do is put what right there in our calculator, this value, and if we do that, you would get B is equal to 40.01 feet. Oh, sorry, it's not on there. I'm sorry. So that's our solution. We could have also done a squared plus b squared equals c squared, 3.5 squared plus b squared equals 40.1, trying to get there, 40.16 squared. You could solve that, you would get the same thing. Okay. So here is an example of being able to use the sine and cosine, right triangle trigonometry to solve different types of problems. The next video we'll do the second problem, and then there'll be a third video trying to solve a third problem on the next page.